Hey there. Welcome back to Ask Amy. So I have a question today from Sue. Sue says, I'd really like to know the difference between feelings and emotions. If thoughts and feelings are the same, where do emotions fit in? She says, I've always thought that feelings come from a deeper place within us and have more of a loving quality to them. It's like they come from the heart and point us to the truth of our being. I've also heard it said that feelings are the language of the soul. But what about emotions? I don't think they're the same thing. To me, they come more from my ego and lower mind and exist closer to the surface and are often more reactions to my outer map of the world and perception. I think that feelings are nicer and more truthful from my experience, and I wonder what you think. So, thanks for your question, Sue. I love that you're thinking about this stuff. Um, I guess to me, the words don't matter at all, and I don't know what. Who knows? These words are made up, right? I mean, what is an emotion? You could even a thousand psychologists that study emotion would probably give you a thousand different definitions. Same with thought. Same with feeling, really. So who knows what the words are? Although I will say that what you're saying makes perfect sense. So if that resonates with you and feels helpful and makes sense to you, that's great. Ultimately, though, words aside, feeling, thought, emotion, words aside, what I hear you pointing toward is that there's something that just feels right, that almost is impossible to talk about, that doesn't need to be talked about because it just is. It just makes sense. It feels intuitive, as you say. It feels like it's your soul talking. Again, these are all words to describe it. But what you're pointing toward there and what happens to be called feelings in your vernacular, that's just something that kind of goes without, like, doesn't need any explanation. You're just gonna listen to it, you're gonna be lived by it, it's just gonna feel right when it shows up. Wonderful. And then there's something else that again, in this question you're kind of mapping onto this word emotion, but the word doesn't matter, could be anything, that feels a little more energetic, a little more frantic. I love how you said it, closer to the surface and are more often reactions to my outer map of the world. So really that's like this chatty mind thinking that we feel whatever it's saying, right? That's kind of the feeling of thought, perhaps, although that's not good either because everything's thought. But it's like this little, what we sometimes call personal thinking, or this repetitive or chatty or ego kind of thinking feels a little bit more like it is what you're calling emotions here. But again, who cares about the words? The words don't matter. I have no clue because no one has any clue. The words are just words. They're just labels. What's so awesome though, and what you're asking and what you're seeing is there's just, it sounds like I might be making this up, but there feels to be some distinction that feels a little bit helpful. And again, a distinction right away, if we know we're making a distinction, we know that's thought too, that because there are no distinctions, this is all one. But but we live in this physical world of thought often, so distinctions will be made that can really help, that can point us back toward the oneness. So if there's a distinction in your mind that feels right, or for any of us that feels helpful, that's like, oh, there's being lived, or there's feeling, or there's listening to the language of the soul, there's intuition. And then sometimes I notice there's this crazy frantic energy, that where emotion and energy feels like it's all over the place. And you've naturally seen that, okay, one of those just seems a little nicer, seems a little more trustworthy. All these terms have done their job. I mean, the terms haven't done anything, but what you're wanting to see done, perfect, super super helpful to have that sense. So I hope that makes sense. That can't really answer your question. I have no idea. The words don't mean anything really. And again, if I told you how I think of it, it wouldn't matter anyway. What matters is that we kind of have some feel for things. we get this bigger sense of what's natural and default and innate and how life's living us. We also get this sense of something that tends to be very dramatic, emotional, perhaps, all over the place, always changing, always conflicting, always contradicting itself. And we kind of come to see, okay, yeah, that's all over. There's nothing stable there. I don't need to listen. I don't need to try to chase down and track down something that has no stability. We can look instead in this direction of something that never changes, that's always there, something maybe more like, again, just more words, but intuition or life or whatever that might mean. That's what's helpful. And we will know, every one of us will know, when we have some sense of that helpfulness, some sense of where to look in a sense, and what we don't need to pay attention to and trust in a sense. We'll kind of feel that, because our lives will get much, much easier. Things will get much simpler. Things will get much nicer. And many of us, many of you listening to this, know exactly what I'm talking about, because that's the point of this. That's what this does, is we stop chasing around repetitive, circular, contradictory thoughts, and stop trying to solve things out in the world every time we feel uncomfortable. And we start seeing that discomfort, 100% of the time, no exceptions, discomfort is simply showing us that we're wrapped around in a story, that we're identified with a story. We can see that naturally. In seeing that, we start to come back to what's beyond that story, that oneness and that truth, and perhaps feelings, whatever you want to call it, intuition, life, that is beyond this circular, always changing story. That's amazing. That's what we're all looking for. That's what, you'll know it when you feel it too, because things really start to change. So I hope that's helpful. It's a non-answer to your question, Sue, and it's a great question. But where you're pointing, I think, is perfect. You're already having a sense of this that's helpful for you in the most helpful way possible that it can be for you, way beyond kind of worrying about what the terms are. So that's great. So thank you guys so much for listening. If you have questions about anything at all, thoughts, feelings, emotions, habits, anxiety, depression, relationship issues, anything at all, I love to speak to them through this lens. So send those to askamy@thelittleschoolbigchange.com. And I'm here every Monday speaking to them. So have a great week. I'll see you guys next week.